All right. So, the beginning of my preliminary, research for potentials for this place, potentially needing a civilian oversight investigation. So, Bend County, apparently this is who the person that, when it comes to the sheriff's department and the public relations, this would be the first person to speak to. Let's see here. And so that person, when I asked him, I told him what I was investigating. And his response was, let's see, I wrote it down, took some notes. It's called journalism. He informed me that the jail was not the sheriff's stuff. And I told him that the investigation involved deputies that prior to November 2019 were employed at the jail. He kind of had somewhat of an avoidance response to that. Let's see, I showed him the article from, I don't know, the New York Times or whatever about LA. Then, since my research shows that this cop gang stuff includes corruptive practices within the clerk's office and within judges and DAs, I went to essentially the clerk's person. They apparently have no PR representative or communications person. They have they referred me to I went around, got contact information, okay. So they referred me to the administrator of the district court. And so since the jail is operated by the commissioner's office now, I then went over and got the communications coordinator. And so then, let's see here, those ones. It also involves corruptions of agreed upon shitty public defense. So essentially, I was referred to the communications coordinator for the Office of Public Defense. Let's see here. And let's see, the jail itself. The jail itself was a reference to the records department. That's all I got out of that. I told him what I was investigating, every single person. I told him I was just looking for contact numbers and who to specifically speak to about it. And then, since it involves mayors doing cover-ups with city attorneys, I got the communications and the city attorney, their numbers at the Richland City. And so, since it also involves usage of essentially Essentially, it involves the Hanford side also. I got the communications director. And then, let's see here. Since it also, let's see, it also involves a federal judge. I went into the courthouse, or into the federal building, and they just gave me the generic numbers, which that didn't surprise me at all. Okay, that didn't surprise me at all. That's what I expected from them. Let's see. One of the things about the courthouse, or the federal building, so when asking, I was speaking to like the secretary or whoever is the face of the window. And then some plainclothes clerk came up and started like inquiring more extensively when I was just asking for contact information. And then he was essentially utilizing a filtering style method. And then I was wondering why the fuck he was even talking to me, because he's just some fucking clerk and they don't mean nothing to me. And I did notice that, a side note about the federal building, there's somewhat of a subversive misogyny, which is a clue into these cop gangs, because they operate on a master slave. So there's potentials for involvement of the U.S. Marshals and security staff in the federal building. And I know that some of those people were somewhat potentially part of the major infrastructure of the cop gang. Okay. And so that's what I noticed. I noticed those guys, they fit this description, the demeanors, the attitudes of people who are basically older. They're all older. They fit pretty much the psychological profile of people that are in those type of cop, in these type of deputy gang, mafia, overall police mafia, kind of law enforcement mafia kind of stuff. They fit the demeanor of the people that are older after they're not doing the sex stuff in it. They're like that, like the people that were in there. So let's see. Oh, the other thing, the jail, they didn't have any phone number for me. They also didn't seek any other person higher than the person in the window. The federal building told me there was no PR or communications person. Let's see. I have another one, but it's not with me right now. I went to the Richland Police Department. They had a communications person. Probably just sitting in my seat in my car right now. Let's see. So then, a lot of the stuff I was researching about the deputy gang stuff was their cover up methods and stuff. So that's kind of my angle on my investigation. So that information led me to, in the past, I've been gathering this information for a very long time. So I went to the Lord's Counseling Center, where they have the city basically has one psych unit. and that they just referred me to their website, basically. And the person there didn't really have much, just like a regular, the person that checks you in or something. Basically, they didn't have any PR communications. So then, a lot of it also involves children that are used to be blackmailing for the whole like law enforcement gang or whatever uses children. This is what my research shows. I have an anonymous source who prefers to stay anonymous, and this is something that was like way weird. So here I was like speaking to a lot of people that were just utilizing some corporate PR avoidance methods and stuff. So then I showed up to this. It's called Cupid Daycare or Central United Protestant Daycare, where children from there are used by these law enforcement. And this is what my research shows, to be blackmailing for these dark webs that they use. And so I walked in there and I told them that I was an investigator investigating privately, which I am, about an incident of a child being used or being groomed sexually with rituals with fire, and that child also showed strange personality changes and overt affection after that child's time there. And then that child was seen being used for cop gang blackmailing. And so I didn't tell them that part. All I did, I walked in there. I told them I was an investigator, investigating like the exploitation of a child, basically, and that I wanted, if they had a PR, communications, or an administrator, or I also asked for the attorney that they use or whatever for inquiries in the future. I was asked to wait for essentially what is the daycare administrator. Right when that person walked in, they started acting aggressive, rude, with threats. She seemed defensive, and then essentially started utilizing intimidation methodologies where she then informed me that an ex-cop is the associate minister there at the time, and then she started getting really just kind of angry at me because she said, well, this just isn't the right way. This just isn't the right way. And I told her, I was like, oh, well, I'm a private investigator. It's like, I don't, you know. She's like, well, these things normally come through the state. We are state certified, blah, blah, blah. That's how she was. And then I was like, well, I'm doing a separate inquiry on this stuff. And he's like, well, there's a normal course of action, and this is serious stuff. And then I started being a bitch at me, okay? And she did. And all I was doing, I was just like, well, I just want contact information and stuff. She's like, well, I don't even have to let you in this building. I was like, oh, all right, fine. I was like, you're not going to give me contact information? Fine. I'm just going to leave, okay? I was pretty normal. It was just kind of pissing me off, but I was normal with her. And then as I was getting into my car, the ex-cop associate minister approached on me, okay? And then he asked why I didn't go to the police station and involved in stuff. And it's like, part of the anonymous source reasoning is that basically the anonymous source has already taken information to the FBI, to the sheriff, to the local PDs, and all those people refused to file any report, even after being reminded of the mandatory reporting requirements. And this is why, this is why my angle is to do it in a private investigation way. And so that's kind of like where my guess is that in the past, this this they have like a nationwide cop mafia. Okay, so these children that they use get listed, and then they have like a cross referencing in in a side way, and then they won't report anything about it, and that I mean, I told the associate minister, I was like, oh, I've already, yeah, they've already gone to the FBI and our calls have already been made. And that is like where he started looking really paranoid. She's then walked up, started still being a huge busy at me. And I was like, well, you people fucking did this. You people are sick. Because they acted guilty. That's one of the things. See, these other people, like the sheriff, he looked sheepish a little bit in like a nonverbal communication, but he still acted normal. These people acted guilty, and and if and they started like utilizing like two-person intimidation methodologies and were being somewhat rude and aggressive at me and shit. And so essentially, what I found was that essentially, if you go to the CPS or cops, basically it's like this, where it just goes round and around and it doesn't lead anywhere. Where I even went to the guilty party, basically, and then that leads nowhere. And then I went to this, the anonymous source has CPS and cop attempts, and that led nowhere. And so that's where I know that the anonymous source was utilized by these cop gangs, and that I know that they use a very highly secure online dark web to blackmail with those children. And so that kind of ties up that association. When she told me that she was an ex-cop, I was like, that makes sense. So yeah, essentially what it comes down to is old Central United Protestant. This is kind of the reason why you go around and like, this is why you do face to face, because you know what? When people react like that, okay? When people react like that, that's how guilty people react. It is. It is. And the whole idea is that the reason is they kept kind of like trying to fish out the who I was talking about and stuff. I gave them my name. I gave them my email and my phone number. And that the whole idea is that in my research that it's like an extreme youth. They got a healthy numbers of youth at it that are engaged in this QAnon, like, hacker QAnon kind of stuff, that are in middle school and high school, and that they do online intimidation of the victims and stuff, and that's what leads to the anonymous source reasoning, and that there's been threats and intimidations and stuff. And so that is why I wouldn't divulge who it is at all. But yeah. Another thing is they attempted to get me to. I told them, I was like, oh, most of these people, if they started moving into it a little bit more, I was like, oh, I just need your contact stuff and your email, because I told them, I was like, I'm acquiring notes and I'll come up with a formal explanation in the form of an email, so you can get an overview of what my investigation's about. And that then there was an attempt to be isolating and fishing me in like a, well, let's go talk about this right now. Let's go talk about this right now. I was like, no, I just need your contact information and I'll send you the information. And like, this is where they have like a whole, like, they have like it seems like somewhat of an instant kind of it would seem like they didn't want me to be doing an investigation about it, right? She started getting angry at me for not going through the well, worst thing when this is done, it's supposed to run the state. It's like, oh yeah, you know what I know? And it's like, oh, it's supposed to run through that way, huh? Is there a procedural analysis that already has it like? Because there's a CPS will have a procedural methodology, and that some of these places do like highly researched. Some of these places that do that stuff, they highly research the procedural methodologies of like CPS and cops and stuff, and then they have somewhat of a scripted response that's somewhat trained and shit in ways, and that here's why I do mine with things in my own way. And I do that because it disrupts people that are used to a predictable methodology. See, unpredictability. And look what happened. They started being she started being aggressive. She's the direct administrator of that preschool. You know, those people aren't supposed to be acting like that. It's a fucking church preschool. They're not supposed to be acting like mean and stuff. That's how she was acting. So, this was a pretty eventful boredom day. And so, the reality is that, let's see, the other thing about CO or whatever, which took over for CH or something, it's a floor company. Essentially, the like secretary was trying to do some sort. I was just asking for, was just asking for the communications person. I was just asking for that contact number. That's all it was. That's all it was. She like wouldn't give it to me. I had to wait for the person just to come down just to get the contact number. That's how. Then she was like trying to do some sort of phishing. It's like, well, who the fuck are you? Just answer the phones and give me the fucking number or call the guy up. That's what her job is. Her job isn't to be filtering and fishing at me and shit. That's what I wonder. And then in some ways, this includes like aspects to Catholic and stuff in some of these other hospitals. And then nobody knew anything. I go, well, I'm looking for the corporate PR or administration or vice president number or contact information on that or communications person. And nobody knew. And they had the computer sitting right in front of them and nobody knew. It was like, no real way. You're not really allowed to walk around and stuff. And there's like, no. Yeah, the whole idea. I do face to face because I attempt to see what people react like. Okay? Honestly. A lot of it is to see who's around, to see who's in the building, to see what kind of federal marshals are in there, to see who would be in society of Barton Looney. And so, my unorthodox methods are like methods before everybody got lazy and just sat on a computer. And so, what you miss by just looking up the phone number on the computer, you miss the reactions of the people. And then, you know what? When it comes to like being a wizard, these people at this weird church preschool, who controls their emotions now? And then when it comes to like the sheriff, I showed him the New York Times article. Okay, I told him that I was researching the same thing here. I showed him. Okay, and that shit will affect them psychologically. It will. And then, See, when you disrupt people, it causes them to make mistakes. Okay? A lot of these people around here that are involved with this stuff are also involved with like an online voyeur site, or they have hackers that are constantly hacking everybody's shit that they utilize illegally. And so then, if you go and you disrupt them, then in ways, if you have the right magic, you might be able to see what people think is normalized behavior. Okay? It might be normal for this sheriff to literally use the gang cop system. It might be. He might not even realize that he might have gone right back to his office, may have pulled out his phone or his home like computer that they use for that stuff. He might have gotten right on that and started utilizing literally what would be the cop like deputy gang online interface system. It might even be hacked onto his work fucking computer. That's how it works. It works like that. And so that's the whole idea is that I asked him if he had heard it. He hadn't heard anything about it. And I thought that was weird because why did the commissioners take away the shit? You know, in my research, these people, they blah, blah, blah on what they think is secret dark webs. And that when it comes to the commissioners, you know, they're like weird libertarians here. They don't like people spending any money, and they built all these buildings and shit. They don't like those fucking Republicans spending all that money and shit on the tax money. And so they kind of have like even a conservative world that attempts to like find out what their shady shit is and shit, because they don't like them spending the local tax money on that shit. Basically, it's like whatever they had before was more than adequate, and that this is kind of what it is, and that is where, you know, with that comes people who essentially, you know, these libertarian types, once they start doing that kind of stuff, then other hackers start doing that stuff at them. And then it like snowballs. And then anybody that has anything that would ever be interesting, essentially the whole dark web sees. Okay? And so, like this fucking church shit. You know what? The whole idea is that, you know, the reality around here is that it's like a church preschool would be a hotbed for having their surveillance hacked by pedophiles. So with that, you get all these crazy, like, I don't know, conservative dads that know how to hack, that they attempt to keep pedophiles from looking at all the kids and shit. That's pretty typical anywhere you go. And so the reality is that type of stuff kind of happens around here also. And that if they were to see the reaction while I was in there, that would have activated a whole, like, inquiries. Okay, their reaction would have had people, like, dumbfounded by their reaction to me. That's how the weird hacking world is around here. You know, I'm not going to do anything to change it. That's not what I'm doing. Okay? I just know that type of stuff happens around here. And so this is what it is. It's like, you know, when it comes to these people, that's why I really wonder, because, you know, here I am doing the things that journalists do, okay? And that just because people have their form of media or whatever, I have mine. And that way you may not realize is that most people don't read newspapers, but lots of people watch news. And that those people blah, 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 blah about anything and everything all fucking day long. So just remember that the basic news idea is broadcast news. And just because I don't have some dumb Fox News suit on, and just because I sit here being the broy version of John Lennon in my the broy, as John Lennon used to do, like videos of him and his women sitting on a bed. Okay, and so this is my artful media method, and then I do demonstrations too. But I mean, the whole idea is I don't have to do anything. This is broadcast journalism. That's what I'm doing right now. You know, the whole idea is that all I'm doing is going, here's what I got, here's what my interactions were like, and this is what my news broadcast is about. And that, you know what? This is hot pizzazz. These weird fucks at this church that react like that, they like got pissy at me, okay? I didn't even tell them who I was. I just said I was inquiring for an anonymous source. And they got like super fucking defensive, okay? Like ultimate, like the people, like when those dumb cops are like, oh, he's on the defensive. It's like that.